Well, you guys, that's it. After a game from start to finish that was pretty arguably one of the best Super Bowls we've seen in recent time, which also included a very interesting penalty towards the end of the game, to say the absolute least, but I will let you guys go at each other in the comments over that. Nonetheless, though, no matter which way you want to cut it, Kansas City is your Super Bowl champions. But it wasn't just the simple Kansas City domination blueprint we've become so used to throughout the course of this entire season, because for a fair portion of this game, it actually looked pretty worrisome if you were on the side of Chiefs Kingdom, and that can be said for many different reasons. So what seemingly flipped the script in the middle of this game for Patrick Mahomes and company to come out hoisting the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in a 4-year window? Well, it's something that, at least at the time being, I don't think anyone was expecting to see for the rest of the night, so let's get into it. One sec though, guys, if you haven't yet, don't forget to like the video if you do enjoy, subscribe, and turn on those notifications to never miss another NFL video, because yes, even though we are unfortunately into the offseason now, we're still going to continue to come out with brand new NFL content every single week around here, so trust me, you do not want to miss it. Now, to get back on topic with the Kansas City Chiefs, if there was one storyline to focus on heading into this game more than anything else, I think it's fairly easy to say it was the historically great offenses for both teams heading into this in their own respective rights. Because of course, as most of us know, with the Chiefs being so heavily predicated on the air attack, which may I remind everyone was the clear-cut runaway best in football for the 21 weeks prior heading into this, and also while most of us knew of the challenge being presented by also going up against the best pass defense in the NFL this entire season as well, I still don't think anyone could have predicted the early game struggles of Kansas City would have been as bad as they actually were, because aside from their first time getting the ball and driving the entire field to score with absolute ease, which really made it seem early on like they'd have anything but issues moving the ball this entire game, both from an air attack and even ground game perspective, but after this drive, things just seemed to stall out of nowhere. I mean, they weren't utilizing the run game as much as they probably should have. The veteran Eagles secondary was finally starting to live up to their reputation in causing issues through the air, and also not to mention with Patrick Mahomes re-aggravating the high ankle sprain in the midst of all of this, which didn't just leave people wondering how much more limited Mahomes would be, nonetheless if he'd even be able to put any pressure on it going forward, and then before you knew it going into halftime, which also very well could have been a 17-point margin if it weren't thanks to the crucial Nick Bolton scoop and score in the second quarter. From a statistical standpoint, even just when you're considering the amount of total plays ran, time of possession, and even total yard comparison on both sides, Philly, at least for the time being, was completely dominating the momentum of the game. But the halfway point is also where we saw this team, and more specifically the brilliance of head coach Andy Reid and offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, pull out one of the more impressive mid-game turnarounds that I've seen in recent time, especially on as big of a stage as this. Now, if you want to do a side-by-side comparison of the first half to the second half in terms of success, efficiency, and pretty much anything on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, it was pretty much a complete 180 turn. And to keep it simple, it was due almost entirely to this team fully committing to what most thought would be the successful blueprint to this game after all. Focus on the short reads more than anything, mix in your ground game more than you typically have this season, and allow your stars to make the big plays themselves rather than forcing Mahomes to hunt down big air plays against this secondary. And while just watching the film in itself, it's pretty clear how much of an expansive look we got into Andy Reid's endless playbook in the second half. What might have actually been more crucial in the end than the Chiefs' updated offensive scheming was, ironically, as almost nobody could have expected, the mobility of Patrick Mahomes. Because again, after watching Mahomes limp off the field in the second quarter, seeming to be in more pain than he had been at any point prior in the entire postseason, I was fully convinced for a minute that this was turning into the Chad Henne show. But instead, we got a more mobile Patrick Mahomes in the third and the fourth quarter. I mean, guys, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, we didn't just see his mobility in the pocket improve, we saw him rolling out of the pocket to extend plays numerous times. We saw him scramble for massive yardage on some of the biggest plays of the game, all while dealing with a re-aggravated ankle sprain. And it's not even just that, but he was also pretty much as accurate and perfect decision-making wise in the entire second half as you possibly could be. But another big reason as to why it's so easy for this Chiefs team to pick apart some of the best defenses in the entire league, seemingly just with the snap of their fingers, is actually due to what most critics thought would be the ultimate reason that Kansas City wouldn't see any championship success this year. That being, of course, the spread out use of the wide receiver position. Because after taking a new route in the wide receiver room by parting ways with Tyreek Hill, to then searching for new weapons in this regard by means of free agent signings, the draft, and even mid-season trades this year, it's just extremely ironic that of all times it could be rubbed into the face of the doubters of this strategy the most that it's on the biggest stage. And for anyone that paid attention to Kansas City in the regular season, they seemingly developed a three-step process as to how their wide receiver room was going to work in most games. Number one, Travis Kelce is always going to get his, and there's nothing opposing teams can do about it. Number two, one of Juju, MVS, or McCole Hardman will be the secondary star depending on the game and situation. And number three, while Kadarius Toney, Skyy Moore, Justin Watson, and Jerick McKinnon will all just contribute occasionally, they will still make a massive difference when it's all said and done. And well, if you watch the Super Bowl, you probably don't need me to tell you that this is exactly what happened step by step throughout this entire game. And as this continually worked all season, again to the surprise of many, it's not much of a surprise now that it ended up working to crown them as Super Bowl champions. And even while the run game, when used, really couldn't have been any better in terms of moving the field for these guys when it actually mattered, you absolutely cannot talk about that without also singing the praises of the Chiefs' offensive line. Because again, even from this perspective as well, going up against one of the best quarterback and run pressuring defenses we saw in the entire league this season, and to not allow a single sack the entire game on your already hobbled quarterback honestly seems worthy of giving a Super Bowl MVP to the entire offensive line in itself. But also, with the opportunities and running lanes that they consistently created for the entire game for both Pacheco and McKinnon to absolutely thrive when they were given the ball, even though yes, we have been seeing people give them their flowers, I just don't think it's possible to actually give them enough credit that they actually deserve for the difference they made in this game. Because that difference was seen in literally all facets of the offense. But also, even from a defensive perspective, while I know it seems hard to praise this side of the ball when you give up 35 points in the biggest game of the year, but again, if you want to compare the first half to the second half adjustments that we saw, this team wouldn't have the Lombardi in their possession if it wasn't for their defense's ability to occasionally lock down the many different attack points of Philly down the stretch and make the big plays when they were needed. And honestly, sometimes, whether you like it or not, you just gotta tip your cap to the offensive display that your opponent put up on you. And also, of course, don't forget to be forever thankful that you had one of the most effective offenses the game has possibly ever seen put up a win for the ages. But in the end, no matter which factor you actually want to say was the deciding one in this game, all that matters, at least for you Chiefs fans out there, is that you're walking away as world champions. Nonetheless though, you guys, with everything we discussed about the Kansas City Chiefs in this video, and even the entire Super Bowl for that matter, I'm also, of course, extremely curious to hear what you all have to think about the entire situation. So please be sure to let me know in the comments what was your biggest takeaway from the entire Super Bowl, either from a Chiefs or even Eagles perspective, and also what do you personally think was the biggest difference as to why Kansas City came out as the winners. But also, I just wanted to say thank you so much to each and every one of you out there for watching. I appreciate you all more than anything. You all know this, and I will see you guys in the next video.